It might be the bye round, but things rarely stop here at the DeeBrief, particularly during the season. And tonight, it's all about our sponsors as I welcome Anthony Renzella from Melbourne Apartment Collection. How are you, mate?
I'm very well. Thank
Bye
you.
round.
Bye round. Yep.
Enjoying it?
I think it's much needed.
Yeah, much
Yeah.
needed. 4-2. It's been a
needed.
good start. It's been a very good start. I'm impressed because if you look at the fixture congestion that we had and the two Adelaide trips, Sydney in opening round where it was billed as the Gawn v Grundy clash, I think we've done pretty well.
I'm content with 4-2.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's good.
I'm happy to. Now, mate, your ads have obviously been doing the rounds on the DeeBrief, and you've backed us in for this season. So, firstly, we appreciate that. But before we get stuck into your business and we talk Melbourne Apartment Collection, I just want to know why you're a demon. What's the backstory?
Well, it's a pretty simple one. My old man's a Melbourne supporter.
Yep.
My mum's a Collingwood supporter. Which
Oh my God!
I didn't think I should utter those words on this podcast. But
Did you hear that, Derek?
And it was a pretty simple decision as to who was going to take me to more footy games, and that the answer was Dad. So it was a matter of just getting to the G and watching games. So Melbourne it was, and there was probably some years where maybe the decision wasn't as smart as it was when I was very young. But always proud to have stuck with them.
Yeah, we're all battered and bruised at the end of the day. Favorite players as a kid growing up?
Oh, it's always a tough one. I've had sort of different eras of favourite players. I think Jim Steins was probably the first player that I really, really stuck out to me of that era. I think I met him when I was a really young kid somewhere at wherever it would have been, and gave me a scruff on the head, and I was just in awe of the size of him and the presence of him. And I remember just going to footy games and just keeping an eye on Jim and just watching him play.
Nice.
David Schwartz was another big one, sort of from that era. I loved watching him play footy.
Did you have the number 5?
No, I never really got a number on the back of the jersey. I always used to just run the blank number because I used to pick and choose between players too often. I could never commit. I always had a few numbers at home that I would have picked up from Rebel that I would have asked mum to stitch on, which she never did because I kept changing my mind, so it remained blank. But that was basically the crux of it.
I don't mind that approach. It means you can't get heartbroken if they leave.
You can't get heartbroken. That's right.
Yeah. So I'm heartbroken at the moment because my most recent number 10.
Yeah.
Angus.
Yeah.
Not there anymore. I was going to ask.
That was heartbreaking.
Oh, mate.
Yeah.
I think it's still hurting us at the moment when
Yeah.
you look at our halfback position. But favourite players during those good years. So when we had Northey into Balm, who had a decent 1994 before it fell off a cliff for him, into Danaher, and that's my vintage as well.
Yeah.
Same year level and everything. Those were some of the fondest memories I've still got as a Demon supporter. But I was going to ask you, during the lean years, so my boy was Cale Morton.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
That is crazy. Cale Morton was not my boy during those years.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've
any Jarrah?
Liam Jarrah was, and probably still is, the most exciting player I've ever seen pull on a D's jersey.
Yeah.
Didn't play many games of footy for the D's or footy generally, but just his combination of just like raw footy IQ and athleticism was just awe inspiring.
The one he snapped over his head from about 40 out.
Yeah, just unbelievable. So he was he was definitely a shining light through some pretty dark years there. Nate Jones was always one that was just sort of goes without saying, was just a sturdy, consistent footballer that you could always sort of rely on in those years. I think there was a good year of Brent Maloney in there maybe. It wasn't all dark. Those years were good though, because Like we weren't competitive. We weren't really winning much footy, but the 2 or 3 games of footy we did win a year, and occasionally they'd be at the G. It was like
Bull ring.
It was like you'd won a grand final.
Yeah.
No, 2 or 3 times a year. So, now you've got to wait.
For finals.
For finals, you got to wait for an actual grand final, and they're harder to come by.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think Nuggets marker Adzi, a shout out to the Thursday crew. We still speak about this in our thread. We're like, can we just go back to those days?
Yeah.
Where a single victory did actually feel like a flag. Now suddenly, Nuggets in particular is saying, I can't be bothered until we hit September. Like even if he said, even if we went 22 or 23-0, like it wouldn't matter until we get to finals. So it is weird now having all that expectation and all that pressure on us.
There's a bit of that. I agree. There's something charming about the, for like 3:20 game or for a 4-something twilight game on a Sunday afternoon. You sort of got a group of mates at
15,000.
15,000 if you're lucky. You got a group of mates that you sort of, you sort of only ever run into at the footy, or you make a point of catching up with at the footy.
Yeah.
You're down in the bull ring at halfway through the second quarter. 3-8 at 3/8 time. And you're just enjoying your afternoon.
Yeah.
Footy's play sort of second fiddle to a good catch up with some friends.
It's true. No, we're very
stress-free as well.
We're very blessed now because we're not watching like Sam Blees and Jordan Gisbert's, even Mitch Clark's fleeting career with the D's.
Yeah.
Like we're now watching, although the forwards are still a little bit crappy, but we're now watching rusted on stars running around. So
we're blessed. Indeed. We are very, very blessed at the moment with the caper of play that's running around out there.
Yeah, definitely. Now, mate, you said off air that you had no issues talking Melbourne.
Yeah.
And you've clearly proven that.
That's good.
You said I've actually got to scrub up on my elevator pitch for my business.
Yeah.
So Melbourne Apartment Collection, I believe it's still pretty new. It's still in its infancy. It's an offshoot of Renzella Group. So
yeah, it is.
I won't do the talking. I'll allow you to do it.
Melbourne Apartment Collection is a very new business. It's a restructure of quite a sort of an old hospitality business that we've run for a long time, specialising in serviced apartments. What we've done is effectively sort of put quite a few properties under the same umbrella, being the MAC umbrella. Overall where we see ourselves is we're sort of in between the big box, sometimes stale serviced apartment buildings that exist in Melbourne, and at the other end of the spectrum, the kind of lucky dip of Airbnb apartments and houses that exist in Melbourne. So we sort of sit in between. We offer that clean, comfortable, safe, consistent, secure, customer service backed accommodation.
Yep.
Without the frills of a hotel, but located in some unique Melbourne locales, offering that live like a local experience, I suppose, that Airbnb does. So ultimately, we see ourselves and our properties and our apartments as a home base for an immersive Melbourne experience. Us and all of our staff are from Melbourne. We love Melbourne. We live and breathe in Melbourne. We eat and drink in Melbourne.
We go for Melbourne. Most of us do. And we're passionate about what it's got to offer. So we see Melbourne as the cultural and sporting capital of Australia. It's obviously spoken about as the sporting capital of the world, and I certainly agree with that. So. We really see our apartments as as I said, a home base where you can book in, what you're getting, and at your doorstep is just food, drink, culture, arts, sports. Very importantly so. And the locations as well. So St Kilda, South Yarra, Middle Park. That's quintessential Melbourne Football Club. When you think about the demographic. To all the listeners out there. Yeah. And I know we'll have people that live in other states. Mount Buller apartments coming soon. Someone joked you should probably hit up the ski slopes and see if you can do an episode up there sponsored. We should. Which isn't the worst idea. Yeah. But those suburbs that I referenced, and then we'll get to Richmond because there's an exciting location that's opening up very, very soon. But those 3 locations in particular, inner city, as you said, great food, great drink, awesome watering holes around all of those locations.
Absolutely.
But probably the greatest thing, in close proximity to the G,
Yep.
although the one that's coming soon is right at the doorstep of the G.
Right at the doorstep. So a few drop punts from the ground.
How many metres?
Well, it's probably a lot of drop punts from the ground, but we're talking about a 5-10 minute walk. Maybe a few loops. Luke Tapscott torps.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, it's probably a better metric.
Yeah.
On Rowena Parade Richmond, so
Yep.
Opening and launching at the start of June this year, so a few weeks away. Starting to shape up really well, but yeah, super excited about that property opening, and the proximity to the G is just second to none.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's ludicrous. So I was on Rowena Parade today, just at the corner store there, getting a coffee with a work colleague, and the G and the not only like the proximity, but
it looms at you.
Yeah. It feels like it's on top of you.
Yeah.
So I couldn't think of a better location. For the people that are listening that know Rowena Parade, they'll probably be really excited by where it is. But for those who are maybe flying in from interstate, or those that are regional match day goers from Victoria, it could not be a better spot. It's right there on your doorstep, as we've said. And I'm excited about it. And I think what we're going to try and do is we'll do a giveaway for a lucky listener to actually spend a couple of nights there. If we can jag it, we'll see how we go. We'll have a chat off air.
We'll work something out.
And then the other thing is, what we'd love to do is we'd love to record an episode from there.
Yep.
I think that would be a good idea as well. But
We'd love that.
yeah, I'm particularly excited about that one. But as I've said, you've got St Kilda, South Yarra, Middle Park, and Richmond, all in a city, very convenient. And yeah, if you're coming in from interstate, or you're a regional, and you want to spend a weekend in Melbourne, why are they going to spend it at Melbourne Apartment Collection? Because you're a D's fan, or what?
Well,
what's the other thing?
That's a big part of it, obviously. But look, things I touched on before, it's the comfort, security of and the cleanliness, I suppose, of these apartments without all the extra frills. So, you don't need to roll into a hotel and have the whole wait in line to check in experience.
True.
Wait for your room to be ready, all that sort of stuff. Here, everything's sort of done remotely. So you checked in before you arrive. Electronic keypad entry. The majority of our properties have parking or easy access to parking, so you can roll straight in, get comfortable, get ready, go out, and come home to lay your head down for a really good night's sleep in a nice, comfortable, well appointed room that's actually nice to spend time in. But ultimately, our rooms are a launch pad to what's around you, and obviously the footy's a big part of that. Other sporting events are a big part of that, and obviously music and cultural events and whatever else is happening in town.
Beautiful. Now, before we get back to a bit of D's, I just wanted to touch on that point. It isn't just about Melbourne supporters coming to the games, spending weekends at these apartments. It's convenient for all the types of events that we cater for. So there's a lot of festivals in town, as we know. There's a lot of big events in town and big concerts. It is definitely a bit of a music hub as well, as we know in Melbourne. So I just wanted to stress that point as well. Like, don't get hung up on the fact that we're asking all the listeners to spend time in these apartments just as Melbourne supporters. Like, come and enjoy these apartments for all the other beautiful things that Melbourne has to offer.
Definitely.
Yeah, I've sold it well.
You have. Me. I know.
Done really well there. What a great plug. Get me on the team.
I know,
maybe a new career for me.
That's it. Yeah.
Mate, so D's, a lot of chatter around at the moment about our forward half.
Yeah.
Particularly personnel. We've seen Big Benny Brown. He wound the clock back in the first few rounds.
Yeah.
Which was great. I mean, the knee, now we're starting to think, is it actually going to hold up for the rest of the season? We've seen Harrison Petty against Brisbane, unfortunately, had a bit of a stinker, if we're going to be frank about that. Bailey Fritsch was out of form. It didn't really function as well as we would have liked it to. And it now has people talking about the never-ending debate. Like, what is our best forward mix?
Yeah.
So I'd like to know your thoughts. I'm personally really excited about Shane McAdam getting a crack. But are you going to... What would you do if you were Goody?
I don't know. It's tough to it's probably one topic that comes up the most when I'm talking D's with my mates. But,
does it piss you off that it always gets brought up?
It it always gets brought up because it's always an issue.
Yeah, true.
So yeah, it does piss me off a little bit, but it's something that I've sort of always struggled to grapple with the I suppose the way we've recruited and I suppose the way we've selected teams. I've always sort of found that, you know, obviously it's not going to solve our issues over the next few weeks and the rest of the season, but I've never understood why we haven't targeted, you know, big pure forwards in trade periods. You know, we saw Geelong snag Jeremy Cameron.
They offered him a farm though.
They offered him a farm. That's fair enough. You know, but like there's, you know,
a few chickens to run around.
That's it. There are other players out there that, you know, you sort of look at other teams and you think, God, what you'd give to see him running around in a D's jersey, and you know, the opposite of that is like what it would change, like how much it would actually change the dynamic of the D's as a team. You know, you see a lot of midfielders running around. You're like, oh God, it'd be good to have them in a D's jersey. But see someone like Harry Mackay running around, and you know, be great to have him in a D's jersey, and it would be a genuinely game changing type of player.
Took Wademan before him.
We took that, yeah. That always hurts a little bit, doesn't it, when you remember that? But
that hurts.
Yeah, that does hurt. But I think short term, like Ben Brown's inclusion in the side, it's so strange in a way. Like it's made the side look remarkably better. And he doesn't even have to be that on. You know, I love Ben Brown, but you know, at this stage of his career, he's not a premium full forward.
It feels Band-Aid solution though, doesn't it?
It's definitely a Band-Aid solution. Yeah. So I think it's about just getting the team healthy. I think Petty here and now in front of us is the best option we've got. Could be wrong. I'd like to see JVR do a little bit more.
Maybe just signing the new contract to 2029. He can decompress. He knows that his home is here. There's
a lot of hype around him.
There's a lot of discontent as well from Melbourne supporters, and then even opposition supporters are saying, "Man, this guy drops so many marks. You can't clunk them." He actually has looked a little bit clumsy in recent weeks. Maybe it's a little bit of fatigue setting in. I think we forget that this is a third-year player as well. I'm backing him in just because I think the talent base is definitely there.
Yeah.
But you start to wonder and you start to question yourself a little bit when you see a guy that we've probably expected to start on fire and he hasn't. Like there was a lot of hype around JVR in the preseason. A lot of people saying, this is his time, he's about to rise. But then forgetting one of the hardest things in footy is to play that key forward position and play it well. And the guy's only in his third year.
He's young, and I think that's ultimately that's a that's the biggest argument for him. You know, he's young, and we, like so often we see some of these big forwards really start to hit their straps in, you know, year 5+ sometimes. So yeah, I'm certainly not saying put a line through him. Why did we sign him up? It'd be good to see a little bit more from him. And I think if we get a bit more out of him, I think the Ben Brown Band-Aid probably needs to stay stuck on for a few more weeks. I think Petty, we need to see sort of what comes from Petty. He's had sort of a bit of a rocky start, obviously back in. So I reckon he's far from hitting his straps, and we saw some pretty amazing stuff from him at the back end of last year. So
yeah, before he went down. I think the thing with Petty as well, we spoke about this on the review show after the Brizzy game. He's had an interrupted start. So injuries haven't helped him. He's come back in. There's probably a lot of expectation and pressure on him to perform because of what everyone saw at the back end of last year and the 6 goals against Richmond. He had the 3 against North before he ended up doing his ankle.
Yeah,
I've still got a lot of faith in him to perform. I think McAdam and Cozzy in that forward line make up, particularly last week when you think about how dynamic Brisbane are in their front half. We lack so much of that.
Yeah.
But the one thing I wanted to point out and turn it into a positive is the form of Neil Bullen and Chandler has probably been the highlight for me from that forward half.
Yeah, absolutely. Neil Bullen this year has just been he's been fantastic. I think you guys were talking on a pod a few weeks ago about him being a bit of a barometer, and I couldn't have agreed with that more. Like it's so hard to put put your finger on where he stands as a player in the squad. But he's really turned into just like a mature sort of leader. He's consistent. You know what he's going to deliver. Like, sure, he makes mistakes. Everyone on the side's making mistakes. Yeah. That was without exception as well against Brisbane. You sort of forgive the Brisbane game, I think. 3 games in 13 days. I think, was that what it was? 3 games in 13 days we played.
3 and 13 or 3 and 12, but it was 5 and 25 against a team that had played 3 and 25.
Yeah. And 2 of them were in 2 of those games were back-to-back games at Adelaide Oval. That's just like,
it's madness.
It's absolute madness. Like the fact that we actually kicked back late in that game was that's probably the biggest takeaway from the whole thing. Like, you've got, everyone looks so flat, and rightly so. And I know you can make the excuse that it's early in the season, and they need, that shouldn't be happening this early in the season. You sort of, obviously tight scheduling is a bit more of an issue later in the season, but at the end of the day, 3 games in 13 days is madness, and you're playing against a fresher side. Yeah. So you sort of excuse that one.
I think you do. I think the other thing that got lost, didn't get spoken about enough. Brisbane still, on paper, incredible team, incredible outfit. The same team that vast majority of experts and pundits out there in AFL world were tipping to win the flag.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that's changed for me either.
They lost the grand final last year by a kick.
Yeah, by a kick.
So, they had a pretty rocky start to this year. And, obviously there's some outside of footy rumours floating around about them. And, you never know how that affects the side. And
I think it pumped them up, though. I think all the backlash from that actually build a resilience around them for that game last week.
Maybe, yeah.
But I think we saw an emotional response.
We saw what everyone expected from Brisbane round 1. Yeah. I think it was Brisbane who were more out of character to start the season than anything else, and they decided to bring their A game against us, and that's it was overdue for them. And it just doubled up with us, being tired.
Couldn't agree more.
Out of steam.
Couldn't agree more. I know a lot of people, well, some people won't enjoy hearing that and they'll think it's an excuse, but we put it on the agenda on the show with Caden and Scotty, and we said a similar thing. And the other thing as well is, like, form is temporary, class is permanent. From a footballing perspective, what happens on the field, I'm talking about Brisbane there, certainly nothing classy about the way that they go about it in general, and the way that they conduct themselves. I think they're absolute grubs.
Yeah, they haven't really shown haven't been too slick or too likable the last sort of couple of years. I do agree with that.
They don't win with much humility, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, 4-2, good start. Who would be leading the BNF for you, Track or Gorney?
Yeah, I think that's a tough one. I think it's got to be Track for me. I reckon Neil Bullen's not far behind, to be totally honest
third?
with you. Yeah, he'd be up there. I reckon maybe third.
With probably Viney.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. It's incredible to think. And again, another one that got lost on people.
Like, we're not talking Brownlow votes here. We're talking BNF.
BNF. So obviously it's that inner sanctum, the things that they value.
I reckon Alex Neil Bullen has he's shown up, 6 games this year.
I reckon Judd McVeigh would be up there.
Yep.
I reckon
he's been fantastic, hasn't he?
In and around the top 5 in the BNF. Even Cade Chandler would be up there.
He's been good. Yeah.
For me as well.
Probably not as much. You don't see as much of him, I reckon, obviously being up forward. So
true.
But yeah, when he gets near it, it's pretty handy.
And then the only other question I had before we do a few call to actions, because it is sponsors night, and we wrap up with how people can find out more about Melbourne Apartment Collection, is single out 3 players you want a bit more from. So you spoke about JVR, so can we make him one? Yep, top of the list. And then who are 2 other players you want a little bit more from?
Ooh, it's a good question. Yeah. These are the sort of things I'll fire up about on the spot
about when you're in bed trying to go to sleep.
While I'm watching the game, and then 5 minutes later, I've lost interest and I've completely calmed down. But JVR is probably the one that sticks out. Yeah, sticks out the most. Harrison Petty, not because I don't think he's out of form. I don't think he's out of form or anything. I think he just needs to. He's sort of revving back up, and it'd be good to see a bit more out of him.
We forget with him
mainly
just quickly.
Mainly because we need it out of him.
The other thing we didn't speak about on the show the other night, and I thought we had to speak about it. He's a class defender.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there going, we need more from you as a forward. The reality is he's still a freaking incredible defender.
Yeah.
He's a premiership defender.
He is.
And even when he went behind the ball in his comeback game, because he had to, because of circumstance with May and Lever going down, I was sitting there watching it with two of my best mates going, fuck, he's a good defender. Like, he knows how to defend. You talk about good defenders. Tom McDonald would be up there in the BNF count as well. He's had an incredible start to the season, in my mind anyway.
Yeah. He's had a better start than I thought he would have. You've called me off guard with the BNF.
No, I know.
With the BNF comment. But,
99% of people, I don't think, expected Tom McDonald to be doing what he's doing. But yeah, I just wanted to call that out before you talk about your third player that you want a little bit more from, because as much as we're getting hung up on Harrison Petty doing the business up forward, if we need to swing him back, he's still an exceptional defender. Yeah,
I think the third. I probably don't have a single player as a third one. I think the one thing that was always evident in that 21 season, the premiership season, was this constant push of twos players in the VFL, always looking for a spot. It doesn't feel like that's as strong as it was. So, I feel like people can get away with a bad game a bit more than they used to be able to, just because there isn't that sort of real, that there isn't that talent really knocking on the door. So I think just those fringe players, I think, is that as a general collect all, just I'd like to see a bit more out of them.
It's actually a really good point, because I think about emergencies, and this is no disrespect, but it probably is. But Tom Fullerton, Adam Tomlinson.
Adam Tomlinson's a big one.
Bill Laurie. Yeah. These are the guys that are in your emergencies list or have been throughout the season.
Yeah.
So you think about strength and depth, and I know Bowie's out and now Salem's out. McAdam hasn't debuted yet, and we were expecting him to be a part of the 23. But there are some queries and some question marks around our depth all of a sudden, which you're absolutely spot on. That definitely wasn't the case in 21. It felt like if we had issues, we could just roll in a player from Casey who were dominating, and had been dominating for quite a few years, and then won the flag in 22, I think it was. So it's not the greatest concern yet, but it might get us later in the season if we need a few troops to come in. So I think it's really valid.
Yeah, I'm watching. I suppose you got to watch the injury list. It's the same with all teams. I think this year there's probably 6 teams you could say are capable of winning a flag if they're healthy. It's 6 games in, so that's a massive early crow.
I agree with it.
But that's going to be the trick this year, I think, for the D's, is staying healthy, but just having that depth as well. In a competition that's this tight at the top end of the ladder, that's going to be the game changer. So it'd be good to see some of those guys really have a crack for a spot.
Who's your number 1 seed at the moment? Giants?
Probably the Giants. Yeah. They're playing seriously good footy. Again, 6 games in, it's just. It's so hard to sort of pick a front runner, but the Giants are playing great footy. Yeah. The Cats as well. It really pains me to say it. I can. It just.
Do you hate them?
I don't like them. I don't like them.
I don't think anyone likes them.
They I'm just sick of seeing them at the up top. Is probably more than anything.
Yeah. Go away.
Yeah, go away.
Spend a bit of time down the bottom.
Pulling it off. Yeah.
Why don't you ever spend time at the bottom?
I don't know how they've just completely avoided it for they've missed finals a few years, but they've never really. Not that I follow them that closely, and
Well, I mean, you're in the game of land and real estate. I'm just assuming that it's farms and beach houses. And
it could be.
All these things that they offer the players. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. It's there's something going on there.
Well, there has to be something going on, because it's like, all right, this guy, Tanner Bruin, okay, I'm going to go down to the category. Jeremy Cameron, that's an obvious one with the farm situation.
Yeah.
There's many others I can't think of. I know Zach Tui's another one that springs to mind as an absolute gun.
Yeah.
I think it's all to do with what they can offer off the books. That's got them down there.
It's quite the accusation.
Land.
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 Land is king.
Land is king down there in Geelong. But I mean, the other thing as well, I don't want to sound bitter, but the fact that they get so many games at their ground where they train at, their home with those freaking tight boundaries.
Yeah.
On the wings.
It's a tough ground to win on.
Yeah.
I refuse to go down there.
It's too good for you. I've been on the terrace many times.
I know you've been down there a few times. You went down there last year, and it's just.
Yeah.
It's not that it's too good for me. It's just like.
No, it can be.
It's
shit
basically an 80% chance of losing in front of an All Cats crowd, which is feral with a blistering cold wind blowing in your face.
It's the shittest. It's the shittest place.
That's a TV job for me every single year.
Yeah, and look, I'm a fan of Geelong as a place, and I've got many friends down there, and I do enjoy going down there, and I like the quieter pace. It's a good town, but that ground, I call it Mordor for a reason.
Yeah, it is Mordor.
It is fucking Mordor, and I do not like it. But anyway, Melbourne Apartment Collection, bit of a plug. How do we find out more? Where do we go? What do we do?
Straight to our website, so melbourneapartmentcollection.com.au. We've got a promo code, don't we?
We do.
We've got DeeBrief.
Forgot about that. DeeBrief.
DeeBrief promo code. So we've turned off all the special events filters and all that sort of stuff. So absolutely any apartment at any event, time of year, 10% off.
10% off. And if you want to just go through the DeeBrief Instagram account, if you're lazy and you don't want to type in melbourneapartmentcollection.com.au into your browser, you'll find the link in our bio. So there we go.
Fantastic.
Mate, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it. But just before you do go, Melbourne by how many next week against Richmond?
Yeah, it's my favourite game of the year, the Anzac Day Eve. I reckon we're going to absolutely spank them this year.
Yeah, you're going to go an Adzi prediction.
I'm saying 10 goals. Oof. Yeah.
I like it. Probably not an Adzi. He'd normally double that and go 120, but
yeah,
we'll take the 60. Mate, it's been really nice having you in, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you for committing to us this year.
Pleasure to be a part of it.
Mate,
Thank you.
You keep this podcast running like some of the other sponsors that have jumped on board for 2024. But at the end of the day, you're running a great setup, a great business, and I'm really excited about the Rowena Parade setup that you've got coming in June as well. So looking forward to recording a pod out of there and maybe a few shenanigans after a game.
We'll see what happens.
Beautiful.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Cheers. We'll crack on here on Sponsors Night on the DeeBrief. We've got Chris Perkins from Wealth Hub Australia to join us. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Adrian. As I said, it's been a long 6 years. I've waited to get the opportunity to jump on tonight. So thank you.
No, mate.
Thanks for having me.
It's great having you on. And very formal calling me Adrian. For the listeners who don't know, I've known Chris for a very, very long time, since I think 2005 or 4 off the top of my head. We went to boarding school together, and I tell you what, we got up to a bit of mischief at boarding school, didn't we?
Yeah, mate, absolutely. I think the first 21 days, it was literally all just D-talk. So we really hit it off from that moment. So here we are now, 2004, what's that?
20 years.
20 years. Jeez. And we've won a premiership, so that's good. It's positive.
Mate, it's very good. Now, firstly, big appreciation, of course, for you and Wealth Hub Australia getting around the DeeBrief this year in 2024, putting your dollars in, ensuring that this thing stays alive, and I'm allowed out on Wednesdays and Thursday nights to record this podcast and tick it off with my wife, Fiona, so thank you. But, mate, the D's, before we get stuck into Wealth Hub Australia, I was speaking to Anthony before from Melbourne Apartment Collection. The 4-2 start. We're happy. We're content, aren't we?
I was actually reflecting on that. Given the off season, obviously everything that happens, going out straight sets 2 years in a row, and then turbulent off season, and then obviously Gus Brayshaw getting obviously retiring, medical retirement just before the season. Everything looked pretty bit of an uphill battle, and obviously losing that first game in Sydney wasn't the start we wanted, but we certainly bounced back pretty quickly, and obviously the Brizzy game just caught up with us in the end. But no, it's all positive at 4-2, I think.
I do enjoy some of your texts that come throughout the week, and of course some of the phone calls that we have. And you sent a text to one of our Pies supporting mates saying it was the perfect loss. It was the loss we had to have to the Lions. There's a part of me that agrees with that, but I'm actually going to take you back to round 0 and speak about the Sydney loss. Now, you were there. It was very humid conditions, I believe, and I know that you're up there on the Gold Coast, so you're very much acclimatised to that weather. You understand what that's all about. But I think the funniest thing for the listeners is I reckon I spent an hour and a half on the phone with you. I was driving down to Geelong, and we were dissecting every single detail of Melbourne's pitiful performance against Sydney. And I think we actually both said it to each other. If we can come out of the next 5 weeks going into our bye being 4-2 at that particular time, we would have just bitten anyone's hand off for it. And here we are.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's 2 weeks or a month can change a lot in football. So very positive at the moment. So all is well.
All is well. Now, just for the listeners' sake, why are you a demon? What's the backstory? How'd you get into it?
How did I get family? So yeah, dad's a big D's man, and then obviously my brother. Mum's obviously a D's supporter as well. So yeah, I grew up in Wagga Wagga, and I remember heading to the MCG for the first time ever. Can't remember how old I was. Would have been maybe 7, 8 years of age, and wearing my full D's jersey and sitting right up the front, literally by myself. My family was up, sitting up the back, and David Swartz ran straight to the fence and literally looked me in the eye as an 8-year-old, and I was just never looking back from that moment. It was huge, amazing.
And was the Ox your favourite as a kid?
Neither and Ox for sure. It's hard to split. So Ox probably didn't play as many years, obviously due to injuries, and obviously he was a bit older than Nita, so probably remember a bit more about Neats than the great Ox.
Yeah, nice. I had a little bit of a chat to Anthony about some of those players growing up before, and he spoke about Jim Steins being one of his favourites as a kid growing up. But then I put a curveball to him, Perko, and I said to him, who were some of the players that you enjoyed through the dark years? And we could obviously rattle off a lot of players that.
I think I know who you might be saying. And I remember the day actually. Yeah.
So who is the player that you're thinking of at the moment, Chris?
Number 20. He wore number 24, didn't he? Robbo.
Yeah. So Robbo.
Heading to the MCG, I think we were playing West Coast. It was his final game ever.
Yeah.
You were I had to drag you that day to the game.
Yeah, just to get there and celebrate the great man. But there's been some dark times. Obviously, we're enjoying the light at the moment. We've seen a lot of games together over the journey, but the one that I'm obviously incredibly jealous about is you actually being over there in Perth, and I've spoken about it in some of the ad reads, and people that know you and know me know that I lived through you and all the FaceTimes and the training sessions. But you've actually got an incredible backstory yourself, because you went through the quarantine experience in Adelaide from Queensland just to get to the grand final in the first place.
Yeah, no, that was a very surreal experience. Very fortunate to get over to Perth at the time due to obviously the lockdowns across the country. My brother and mum ended up coming as well. So, it's sort of going back to that moment when I first saw the D's at the MCG, like being obviously over in Perth at the time, it did feel surreal. Obviously, a lot of the listeners and we all watch the D's, fortunate enough to watch the D's every week almost, but yeah, it literally felt like being a kid again, obviously being over there. So it was really amazing experience, except probably the third quarter when Bont kicked the goal to put him up. Obviously, I think 3 or 4 goals, and that moment actually, it was very scary. But then the rest is history. So.
And the rush. Tell me about the rush. The 3 goals in, I believe, 32 seconds to break Bulldogs' hearts at the end of the third quarter. What was it like inside the stadium?
Adrian, I actually I ducked off to the bathroom
Oh,
just as
no.
they kicked, as they kicked the first, but then I was on my phone. I ran straight back and literally like it happened so quickly. Like literally, obviously everyone watching on the TV and at the ground, everything. It was just literally probably 5 minutes, but it went like a flash. But it was just knowing that you pretty much got one hand on the cup and thinking that that would never happen. But yeah, it was all those emotions tied up into one for sure.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I enjoyed the FaceTimes that night. I don't
Yeah.
remember any of them, to be honest. I've got a funny
Mm.
photo of you and I where I've actually taken a screenshot of us talking on the phone, but I do not remember a single thing. I definitely do vividly remember the next day where you're
Yeah.
with the
Yep.
players and you were down wherever they were celebrating, and you actually got Gus Brayshaw on the line with me, which was
Yeah.
special for me because I'm not one to fanboy with the players in the flesh. I've seen them in the streets before, and I normally just let them do their thing, and I don't want to bother them. I just want to let them go about their life and try and be a normal human, which is difficult when you're an AFL footballer. But getting Gus
Mm.
on the FaceTime and actually giving me a few moments with him to just for me to tell him how much I appreciated what he did and how Herculean he was in that grand final was amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, no, that was again a surreal experience. Who would have thought? Yeah, firstly getting over there, and then the next day being at the pub, and all the D's were wandering around, and yeah, we were lucky enough to see them, and yeah, FaceTiming with people back in Melbourne and around the country. It was yeah, like it's crazy, it's crazy. So, but yeah, Gus Brayshaw, what an amazing person. So he's yeah, dearly remembered.
Who was partying the hardest? Wasn't it Bill Laurie?
Who was part in the heart? Bill Laurie. No, I think that everyone certainly enjoyed themselves that day for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure you.
Hopefully we can do it again one day.
Yeah,
That'll be the icing on the cake
of course, Chris, at the
on a dark
MCG.
cake.
Now, let's talk business. Wealth Hub Australia. I want the elevator
Mm,
pitch and tell us what you specialise in and how the listeners can get involved, particularly for those who are in your target market.
for sure, Adi. So perhaps rather than what I tell you what we do, it's why we do what we do. So myself, I started in financial service 2012 with a big four bank. So don't hold that against me. But yeah, learned a lot whilst I was there. I then went to Sydney, worked for a financial planning firm, and what I noticed working at these different institutions is they've all got their own set of goals and objectives, but they pull you in different directions. So with Wealth Hub Australia, we've got a number of different services under the one roof, so under the one financial umbrella. So the beauty of us is whether you're looking at accounting or financial planning, home and investment loans, or the big ones around mortgage reduction and tax minimisation, you can call our 1300 number, speak to someone, and you've got access to all the services in one place. So yeah, homeowners are a big target market, and just everyday Aussies, whether you're blue collar, white collar, that really just want to get ahead and get your money working harder for you.
Yeah, nice, beautiful. And when you talk about homeowners, what are you specialising in? So I'm probably a good example.
Mm.
So I'm someone that's just sold my home in Brunswick.
Yep.
I'm currently at the in-laws, which is interesting.
Yeah,
No,
good.
I'm just joking. No, they're fantastic people, and we appreciate them having us. So at the moment, I'm living
For
the
sure.
dream. I'm mortgage and rent
Mm.
free, Chris, but I'm ready to dip back into the market. I've got a little one in Harry, as you know. You've got
Mm.
Oliver, who I call Clary,
Yeah.
aptly,
Yes.
which makes sense.
Mm.
And then I've got another little one on the way. So as someone that's going back into the market, if I were to give you a
Mm.
call, what would I expect to hear from you? How could you sell me, Chris?
How could I sell you? Well, firstly, we just really want to understand, well, what are your goals and objectives? So a lot of our typical clients, they're paying a lot of tax, or they've got a 25 or a 30-year mortgage, and find like they're just not getting ahead with it. So we sit down with them, have a discovery meeting, and really understand, well, what are we doing today, and where do we want to get to, and ultimately put a plan in place to help them achieve getting rid of their mortgage sooner, obviously paying less tax, and building their wealth over the long term.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and the key is not changing your lifestyle whilst doing it.
Perfect. Sounds good to me. Yeah, I don't want to drop these beers, Chris. So I want them to.
Absolutely.
I want them to remain.
We've got to see the D's too.
Yeah, of course. That'll cost us a bit of money as well in the aftermath if we do win a flag. So we'll see. Just back to a couple of current day matters, some team questions, and then we'll wrap up. I spoke about the forward line before, and we did it in great detail. So instead of the forward line, I'm going to focus on maybe the midfield, and it's an interesting one. We've lost clearance in 4 of our 6 games. Max Gawn, incredible ruckman as we know, maybe on track for his 7th All-Australian, which is absolutely berserk. I think he's the best ruckman of the modern era. Dean Cox, get stuffed. But there's a lot of people talking about, even though we're constantly winning the hitouts, our top brass of Viney, Petrarca, Oliver, we know he's got the hand issue, which is great. He's had the surgery. He comes out the back end of that, and hopefully he'll be flying again. But do we need to mix it up a little bit more? Cozzy coming back in is definitely going to help with that. But do we look at maybe shaping it up with Rivdog spending a bit more time in there? Tom Sparrow's spent a bit more time in there. Are we getting a little bit one-dimensional with those Rolls-Royce midfielders that have been around the traps for a while? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a great point. We always see Cozzy go in and have a few bursts, and certainly definitely has an impact. So you sort of wonder, well, why aren't we doing that a little bit more? Obviously, you see Alex Neil-Bullen run through there. Probably Rivers, not as much. We haven't seen. But yeah, your traditional Olivers, Petrarcas, Vineys, they've been there, done it for so many years. So yeah, it's interesting. We win a lot of the hit outs. We're not quite getting where we want to be at the moment in the midfield. But again, we're asking a lot of the midfield group, but the year we haven't really quite hit the end of the year where the whips are cracking. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm sort of torn both ways, whether or not they are producing or not.
Yeah, true. And Harrison Petty, I just thought I'd bring him up again. So spoke about it before. He's a big talking point. He's a great defender. I think we've forgotten that. Like when he goes behind the ball, he looks imperious. In front of the ball, do you think he'll actually be a player for us? Do you think he'll actually make it? Or do you think it was flash in the pan last year? Because I think we're all asking ourselves the same question. We all got hyped up, the 6 goals against Richmond. This guy's like, he's the answer. We've finally found it. Melksham winding the clock back last year. Can't expect him to come back in and play to the form he was in 2023. So it's the same question with him. Like, are we potentially kidding ourselves a little bit, or do you think he'll actually get the job done for us in the front half?
Yeah. Again, only been playing back, 3 or 4 weeks, but he's only kicked the 1 goal. Again, injured during a lot of the pre-season. So again, you're always up against it a little bit. But who else do we have? Who else do we have at the moment?
Diesel, Shaki.
Yeah, certainly. No, definitely keep persisting. He's shown that he's good early. Just needs to like the rest of the key forwards start kicking a few more goals. So keep persisting. But obviously the jury's certainly still out. But yeah, very small sample from last year, but he did well in those games.
I said I wasn't going to talk about the forward half because we'd already done it, but I'm going to leave you on this point. Who's your front 6? Who's your front 6, front 7? Who have you got? Because you like doing this. You love picking your teams and texting me, and you're a big Chelsea fan. I'm obviously a big Liverpool fan, and we're constantly, trying to benchmark ourselves. Forth. Yeah, a bit of back and forth. And
a few trophies. We don't talk about trophies too more with Chelsea, though. So
No, we just talk about finishing in 7th and 8th spot from now on. But I said I wouldn't do it, but I
can't.
Top
6 and 7.
Who's your 6 and 7? So let's go through it together, because this is what we love to do when we talk over the phone. So Neil-Bullen and Cozzy and Fritsch, locks. Petty, we're going to have to say, is a lock.
Yep.
Rue is a lock.
Ben Brown's obviously is he in or out? Fulton's someone that we haven't seen in the team just yet. because he came from Brizzy more as a forward/ruck rather than a ruck/forward.
McAdam?
Yeah, McAdam's obviously another one we haven't seen just yet. Do we go 3 key forwards with Petty, Brown, and obviously Rue? That's the question.
The Brown one throws me because I look at it and I go, we've been singing his praises, but I don't necessarily know if his body's going to stay up for the entirety of the season. It's going to be a management issue from week to week from me. So I'm hoping a more dynamic forward line, a slightly smaller forward line with the McAdam makes a lot more sense for me. Cade Chandler's been fantastic as well.
Didn't mention him, did we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just while we're at it,
he's number 7, I think. Has to be.
He's got to be in the team. And then the only other conundrum we've got, and people have spoken about Billings playing at high half forward, but I just get the feeling they're going to put Lockie Hunter in the side for Jack Billings at this point.
True, but are we winning it or losing it in that position? I don't know. Do we go get Petrarca playing a little bit more forward half as well? So don't know. We do look when Ben Brown plays well, we seem to win a lot more games. But when he's playing poorly, we obviously the whole key forward line seems to fall down. So
we can't rely on Ben Brown.
No, we can't. We can't. Maybe who was it? Brown. That's who we were talking about after the Sydney loss round 1. So bring him in for a debut.
Some of the dribble we were speaking after the Sydney loss was just madness. It was
phenomenal.
Crazy. I think we were saying we've got even if we just get to 2 and 4. Just get to 2 and 4, reset, play the Tigers, Anzac Eve, get to 3 and 4. Yeah, we're behind the ledger, but we'll be all right. It was very doom and gloom. We were talking about 3 and 3 as this almost impossible, unattainable win-loss record, but here we are at 4 and 2, so it's not too bad.
Obviously, Brizzy, going back to that game last week, they certainly looked a team that their season was on the line. So, let's be honest, they made a grand final last year, pretty relatively comfortable from finishing top 2. So they're still a quality outfit, and we were just looked tired and needed the break. What was it? 3 games in 13 or 14 days. So yep. I think that certainly was clear on the night, but we're always bullish, aren't we, as D supporters? So we always think we're a huge chance to get that flag.
Yeah,
we'll keep that belief going.
Opposition supporters would say we're always looking for excuses and reasons, but I agree with you. I think it was blatantly obvious to everyone. We're pretty gassed and pretty cooked. Chris, before we go, the call to actions, Wealth Hub Australia. How do we find out more? Where do we go? What do the listeners do?
I think they contact you, Adrian.
Okay, hit me up. Hit me up. Okay.
Hit Addy up. So reach out to Adrian. Say who's this Chris Wealth Hub. So speak to Addy and to find out more as well. Just go to wealthhubaustralia.com.au. So
I'm the middleman.
You're the middleman. Absolutely.
I'm the middleman. So yes, please hit me up. The link to Wealth Hub Australia is in the bio on Instagram, or you can email me if you want, adrian@thehorde.com. That's the podcast network that I never speak about. But anyway, we're on the DeeBrief. We're on the airways. We've just had Chris from Wealth Hub Australia join us. Mate, it's been a pleasure. And I hope you're enjoying Buy Round, a little bit more time with the young one.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, couldn't have come at a better time.
Yeah, no, it's very good. I'm glad you named your son after Clary.
Yeah, no, that's a great name and it was a great day when I got to see him after the grand final. So
excellent. Yeah, very jealous still. Very jealous. Anyway, we'll win one at the G. Chris, thank you for jumping on.
Thank you, Adrian. Cheers.
And thank you for your support.
My pleasure.